All right, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about this super powerful, pretty much invisible force that is constantly shaping what you believe, what you like, even what you think is true. It's called cognitive ease. It comes from Daniel Kahneman's incredible book, Thinking Fast and Slow, and it explains why some ideas just feel right. But let's start with a really interesting question. What makes a lie believable? I mean, is it how well the person tells it? Or the details they use? Well, it turns out the answer is often way, way simpler. It all comes down to a feeling of easy. You see, your brain is working 24/7, constantly scanning everything around you, and it's always asking one basic question. Is everything okay? Am I safe? And the answer to that big question comes from a very simple, built-in easy button. When things feel easy, your brain just kind of relaxes and tells you, yep, everything's cool. I want you to imagine that your brain has a little cockpit, and right there on the main dashboard, there's a single dial, and that dial measures cognitive ease. The needle's always moving, swinging back and forth between easy on one side and strained on the other. Now, you're not consciously controlling this. This is your fast, automatic brain, what Kahneman calls System 1, just giving you a constant gut-level reading of what's going on. So when that dial is pointing to easy, it's a signal that everything is going smoothly. The world feels familiar, it feels safe, things seem effortless. This is what we call the state of cognitive ease. No alarm bells are going off, you don't need to fire up any major mental effort, and everything just feels good. And here's the kicker. It also feels true. And this one feeling connects to so much, it's kind of wild. When you're in a state of cognitive ease, you're probably in a good mood, you're more likely to trust your intuition, but on the flip side, there's cognitive strain. That's when things feel new or difficult. It puts you in a worse mood, sure, and it makes you more suspicious. It feels uncomfortable, but it also helps you pay more attention and, as we'll see, make fewer mistakes. Okay, so this is where things get really fascinating. This simple feeling of easy can create some incredibly powerful illusions. Let's look at how your brain can get tricked into mistaking something that's just familiar for something that's actually a fact. All right, do me a quick favor. Just take a look at this name on the screen and try to remember it. David Stenbell. Got it? Okay, just tuck that away. We're going to come back to him in a minute. So why does this happen? Why does something that feels familiar also feel true? Well, it's a really simple trick your brain plays on you. When you see something you've seen before, a word, a face, a name, your brain processes it just a little bit faster, a little bit more easily. Your brain registers that feeling of ease, and then it makes a leap. It misinterprets that smoothness as a sign that it's seen it before, that it has a history, that it must be true. This is what's called the illusion of familiarity. Okay, back to our guy. Quick question. Is David Stenbell a famous person? Well, in a classic experiment, psychologists found that people who had seen made-up names like this just once, very briefly, were significantly more likely to identify them as famous a few days later. They couldn't tell you where they'd heard the name, but it just felt familiar. And that feeling of ease was enough to create the illusion of fame. And this perfectly illustrates Kahneman's point. He writes, a reliable way to make people believe in falsehoods is frequent repetition, because familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. Think about that. This is the core principle behind so much advertising and propaganda. If you hear something enough times, it starts to feel familiar, and then it starts to feel true. Your brain just has a really hard time telling the difference. So if we know how this whole system works, can we, use it? And the answer is absolutely yes. The science of cognitive ease basically gives us a playbook, a set of rules for how to make any message more persuasive and believable. The key, really, is to do anything you can to reduce cognitive strain for your audience. First, make things easy to read. Use clear fonts, high contrast. Second, use simple language. Trying to sound smart with big, complicated words can actually make you seem less intelligent and less trustworthy. Third, make your message memorable. You're not going to believe this, but rhymes are like a secret weapon. They're judged as being more insightful. And finally, if you're quoting a source, try to pick one with a name that's easy to pronounce. It just feels more credible. Let's look at an example. Take a look at this statement. Now, this is false. Hitler was actually born in 1889. But because it's printed here in a really clear, bold, high-contrast font, it induces cognitive ease, and studies show that people are more likely to believe this clean, easy-to-read version than this one. Now, this statement is also false, but the fuzzy, low-contrast font creates cognitive strain.
And that feeling of strain acts like a little alarm bell for your brain. It makes you more skeptical, more likely to second guess what you're seeing. It's the same basic content, but a different feeling, which leads to a different belief. And the same thing goes for memorable language. Which of these sounds more profound to you? Woes unite foes or woes unite enemies? Most people go with the first one. How about a fault confessed is half redressed? That feels a lot wiser than a fault admitted is half redressed, doesn't it? That's the power of rhyme. It's easier for our brains to process, that creates cognitive ease, and we mistake that ease for wisdom. Okay, so up to now it seems like cognitive ease is always good and strain is always bad, right? Well, not so fast. It turns out there's a really surprising upside to feeling strained. In some situations, it can actually make you smarter. Let me hit you with a classic riddle. Just take a second and read it. Now, for most people, an answer pops into your head almost immediately. 24 days. It feels right, it feels intuitive, but it's completely wrong. Think about it. If the patch doubles in size every day, it would have to be half the size of the lake on day 47, right before it doubles to cover the whole thing on day 48. See, that first wrong answer, 24, that's a product of cognitive ease. It's an easy, intuitive guess from your fast-thinking system 1. To get to the right answer, you have to stop, engage your more effortful, analytical system 2, and actually think it through. And cognitive strain is the perfect trigger to get system 2 to wake up and check the work. And this just brilliantly illustrates the point. Researchers gave students a test with brain teasers just like that one. When the problems were printed in a normal, clear font, a whopping 90% of the students made at least one mistake. But then, and this is amazing, when they printed the exact same questions in a blurry, hard-to-read font, the error rate dropped to just 35%. That's right, the bad font literally made them perform better because it forced them to slow down, squint, and actually think. So in the end, you can see how it all connects. Cognitive ease is linked to being in a good mood. And when you're in a good mood, you tend to be more intuitive, more creative, but also a little more gullible and more prone to simple errors. On the other hand, cognitive strain is often linked with a bad mood. It makes you more vigilant, more suspicious, and more analytical. It's like a good mood tells your brain, hey, things are safe, you can let your guard down, while a bad mood signals that something might be wrong and you'd better pay closer attention. Which leaves us with one final, pretty big question to think about. Now that you understand the science behind this powerful mental shortcut, just take a second to think about your own life. How much of what you believe to be true about the world, about different products, about other people, is really based on solid fact and evidence? And how much of it might just be because it was easy to believe?